And we have Manny Sanchez with us today, who made the most of his time at Ithaca College, graduating in 2022 with a television and I'm guessing digital media, right? You weren't a
It
radio person, were
was
you?
it was the year that they were changing it the next year. So they said your degree can say TVR or TVDM. You get to pick
And you picked drum roll.
TVR.
TVR. All right, he's
I
a
did.
TVR grad. Pilot, as am I. Piloted the esports casting for ECAC tournament in 2021 in multiple ways, being the engine of that operation and doing it for the first time at Ithaca College. Manny parlayed that success and experience into a career with Riot Games, and I called it production operations. That's kind of what I'm familiar with. You can tell me if I'm wrong about that. And happy to welcome Manny to Park Post. Take it away, Manny.
Thank you guys for having me. Let me just share this. Believe I'm sharing. Hopefully the correct screen. There we go. All right, there we go. Uh, everybody good? All right. Thank you guys for coming. I want to talk today a little bit about I guess, my experience in esports and how that I think I've kind of learned quite a bit about how it kind of applies to traditional sports as well. So the things I'm going to go over in this presentation are basically I'm going to talk about myself, brief overview of esports, kind of how I got into the thing and why I switched from going down path of just wanting to do like traditional sports or news or something to esports. I'm going to talk a little bit about working at Riot. And then I'm also going to talk about how esports kind of influences traditional broadcasting. And hopefully I've timed everything out correctly so it doesn't take 6 years. So a little bit about me, graduated in 2022, TVR major. I was really involved at ICTV. At different times, I produced Sports Final, Newswatch, Bombers Live, Gridiron Report, and Wormhole, multiple versions of Bombers Live as well. And I interned at Interface Multimedia, which was it's kind of a real estate like design firm. The Baltimore Orioles broadcast on Masson, which is the RSN regional sports network that they own. Northrop Grumman, the defense contractor, that was kind of terrible. Wouldn't recommend that to anybody. And then as well at Riot. So I kind of got like the full experience, I think, through my internships. I did a bunch of different things, found what I liked and what I didn't like. And I'm currently, yeah, an associate broadcast producer at Riot Games. Just to get it out of the way, just some housekeeping, general like terminology stuff. Just want to give a brief overview about, what some of the things I'm saying are. Riot Games is the company I work for. They are the company behind League of Legends and Valorant, if you ever heard of the games. I work and have been playing for quite a while, League of Legends. That's kind of my specialty. So Riot is the company, League of Legends is the game, and then I work in the League of Legends esports competitive circuit. So in the same way that every week you'll watch, an MLB game or NFL game, we have that, but for competitive League of Legends. The World Championship is going on right now, and I'm waking up at the crack of dawn every day to work on it because it is in China. A couple stats. League's got 115 million active monthly players, roughly. This is kind of old, I will say. And if it looks like this was is a completely different design, it's because I ripped it from a presentation that I gave while I was at Ithaca uh, about esports, which the next slide is also from that, which is basically just to give you, if you don't know, a little bit of a hint at the size of the thing. It's kind of hard to find viewership numbers for a bunch of different things from one year. So the most recent one I found was like 2019. Obviously, where the World Championship is an international competition, so it's probably more closely competitive to like the World Cup or like Olympics or something. Obviously, those far outstrip it in viewership, but I wanted to kind of put it in the context of like major American sports, basically. So the World Championship Finals was viewed by about 100 million unique viewers in 2019, just a bit higher than the Super Bowl and a lot higher than pretty much every other major sport that year. So just wanted to give you guys a little look into how popular it is. Um, and then I kind of want to talk a little bit about how I got into esports, kind of without realizing it. I kind of started. doing ICTV in my freshman year, and I was like kind of just doing news and sports because that was kind of like the professional thing to do, and that was kind of like what there was. I didn't really think about esports as a career. Um, I had been playing League since like 2013 on and off, but really wasn't playing it very actively at the start of college because I was kind of just getting really serious about like ICTV, and making sure that I got as good at that as I could, as quick as possible. But then obviously I was doing mostly sports shows at that time. I think I was producing Sports Final and Bombers Live. And the pandemic happened, and like everything else, it shut down. And I found myself just kind of sitting at home, not really knowing what to do, and being kind of frustrated that like my college is ticking by and I'm not able to actually work on the ground. And so I started playing League again, and I pretty quickly figured out that, while traditional sports had shut down, esports was kind of going strong at the same time. Even at the, uh, I guess, the lower levels like tier two and tier three, even amateur competition. And I decided that I was going to get involved however I could, and kind of started using it as a creative outlet while everything was shut down. I just kind of reached out to teams and tier two and tier three leagues and started freelancing, editing for them, doing whatever. Around that time, Ithaca did not really have an esports club. Like, it was founded like earlier that year. They did not have any teams and anything. I founded the first League of Legends team at Ithaca, and there was one like years and years before I was there, but modern one, in 2020. And I kind of built that roster myself. I used to play in like tier two and tier three, and I was like pretty good. I was like in the top 1% ish of the player base. But a lot of the other people, we just had to go with like whoever was there. And I thought we put together a pretty good roster. But I kind of decided during that time, as we were kind of in the remote world and transitioning back to normal school or semi-normal school, at the time, that I kind of wanted to build something kind of my own, I guess. And this kind of slowly snowballed one piece at a time into something, I guess, significantly bigger. Um, so from there, we were a new team. We didn't really have a home. We didn't have a place to actually play games. You can join any open conference for Riot's like competitive circuits for collegiate for free. But if we did that, we would get crushed by big schools that had, scholarships and, huge esports facilities and, just way more research, like coaching, all that stuff that like we didn't have because we were just like a brand new club team. So instead, I kind of shopped around for open conferences, which were basically like partner conferences. A lot of them are traditional sports conferences, although not all of them are like the Big East or something. We decided to go with the ECAC, which Cornell hockey, I believe, is ECAC. Ithaca, I think, used to be ECAC in some things. I'm not sure if they still are, if they've moved over the Liberty League for everything. But basically, it's kind of the same thing as like, Ithaca, we're trying to create like a really good product for our TV shows. And if we threw all of our football players into D1, they would get obliterated. And that's kind of why the division system exists in collegiate sports. And that's sort of what we were trying to imitate with going to a smaller partner conference. It also had teams that were a lot closer to home, like RPI, for example, or like Syracuse used to be in there, although I'm not sure if they are anymore. Um, and that was kind of why we decided to do that. But unfortunately, there was a $1,500 entrance fee, and Ithaca was not really giving anybody any money at the time because it was the height of the pandemic and nobody knew what to do. So I had to go pitch to the club sports council. That's where this bottom right or bottom left graphic and the other two from before came from. So I did give the pitch. They voted 24-1 to pass it. And then I was like, well, okay, if we're going to be in this thing, we should broadcast our games. And I was one of the producers of Bombers Live before COVID, but obviously everything shut down. We got the ECAC funding, and I kind of pitched ICTV. I was like, how about we broadcast our games? And they said, sure, if you can build a show from scratch with nobody and no prior experience. So there were a lot of technical challenges kind of to get a feed of the game into the switcher that I had to work with like Nigel Martin and some of the other tech people at Ithaca to get a handle on. But it was kind of it worked out really well. It was fun. But at that point, I was now the captain of the team. I was the coach of the team. I was the manager, and I was producing the broadcast. So that was too much for me to do by myself. So Mary Turner, who's another TVR major, also works with me at Riot now, and was the esports club president at the time. She ran the control room while I was like actually playing in the games. Um, so it was a cool, new, different thing. And then the ECAC noticed our team only made it to the semifinals and then we lost. But ECAC, they were big fans of our show and they said, "Hey, do you want to be the official broadcast?" And we said, "Sure." And our coverage was, I thought, pretty good. We were nominated for a CBI and a BEA award in the sports broadcast category for one and the esports for another, I believe. And so I kind of want to, for everyone that's still in college, right? And kind of wonders like, oh, I don't, there's this thing that I want to do, but it doesn't exist. And I'm just not going to try because like, there's no way I can get it off the ground. Like in the spring of 2020, there was no esports at all happening at Ithaca. And by 2022, we had like a nationally recognized broadcast. So like, pardon my French, but like, you can just do shit. Like you could just make stuff if you want. This was something that I turned around in 2 years, and it turned out pretty good. Um, After that, that's kind of when I applied to Riot, and this is why this kind of whole story beforehand is important, because I got auto rejected immediately from Riot, which was not great, and I was kind of lost because I submitted it like in the middle of the night on a Friday and was like, why did I get an email at 4 a.m. the next day? That was clearly written by a robot. Um, so I decided that, and this would not have been possible if I'd done the other stuff. I hadn't done the other stuff before this. I was like, I remembered that basically Riot had a Discord server for all of the club sports like officers, and I was a captain, so I was in it. And one of the internship coordinators had done a AMA with all of the captains when they'd opened the internship programs earlier that year, and I had sat in and listened to it. I hadn't asked any questions, but I was like, I wonder if this internship coordinator that did this AMA is still in the Discord server. So I went and checked it, and she was. And so I reached out to her and said, "Hey, I thought I had a pretty competitive, you know, application, and it seems to get auto rejected. What happened?" She got back to me and she said, "Oh, you forgot to tick the box that says you currently go to this college." So she put me back in, and I wound up getting the job. So if I hadn't gone out and done all that stuff, I wouldn't be working here today. So it's definitely like a way that college has really, really positively affected my professional career, because otherwise I would never have been able to reach out to that person, even though, it wasn't strictly something I did after this. And I guess that's probably a good way to, I don't know, it's like a really good way to, I guess, make your own luck, right? Because everyone, with how the economy and the job market, especially in entertainment, has been in the last couple of years, everybody that's graduated recently that I talked to, and I'm sure you talked to, kind of will talk a little bit about like, oh, I got lucky with my thing. And like luck is kind of important. You have to be in the right place at the right time. Riot had never done a live broadcast internship before that summer that I just happened to be in my junior year and perfectly positioned to do it. Um, and so on a certain level, I'm lucky, and then also on a certain level, like I kind of manufactured my own luck by, going that extra mile and trying to make the broadcast, and then finding out I was able to talk to that person. So, uh, please try to do stuff at college. So I kind of got to Riot after that. The timeline for that was I interviewed in the fall of 2020. It was like 4 rounds. It was crazy. Um, they asked me if I wanted to come on early as a part-time like freelance video editor in the spring while I was still in college, and I said yes. In the summer, I actually did my internship. In the next spring, they brought me back again as a freelancer. Then I graduated Ithaca and moved to LA in May, and I turned down a couple other offers from just traditional sports things because I was like, I'm just going to go all in on esports. I came in originally as a tape producer and an assistant writer. Then in January 2023, I got up to junior associate broadcast producer. And in July of 2024, I got my current role, which is associate broadcast producer. Um, and the other thing that I got randomly from, first of all, it's very funny that my first job as someone who was like born in the digital age, like out of college, was tape producer, but we just kind of call it that. It's video playback. The other thing I got was this. We won a sports Emmy in 2022 and again in 2023. So, like 6 months out of college, I was working on like an Emmy award winning broadcast. And I was talking to Alex before this about like what I should show to give people an idea of what we do. And so I went and I actually found the the reel that Riot submitted for the Emmys that year that actually won us the thing. Now, obviously, it's a sports Emmy. The category is like esports championship coverage or something. So we're kind of cheating because we have our own category, and Riot's the only major contender. This is 17 minutes long. We are not going to be watching the vast majority of it. Basically, what you need to know is our coverage kind of looks like this. At least it did look like that. We had an analyst desk. We would do a lot of stuff that like a normal sports broadcast would do, like a sponsored telestrator segment, for example. People are drawing on the screen, doing all that stuff. This is kind of what the draft coverage kind of looked like. We were in the Chase Center, which is where, oops, I went one screen too far. We were in the Chase Center, which is where the Golden State Warriors play, which was kind of an awesome venue. And this is kind of what our in-game coverage generally looks like. So unlike normal sports where they have, camera operators everywhere, we have 3 observers that are on the like League of Legends like spectator client, moving stuff around. And as the tape producer, it was my job to kind of coordinate all of the video playback, which means like these replays were me. I was basically working with 3 observers who were kind of alternating who was live and who was working on replays, as well as a team of 2 EVS operators and a live editor right out of college. So Riot gave me a lot of responsibility and a lot of opportunities right away, which was a little bit intimidating, but definitely worthwhile, I would say. And yeah, so that's like one of our coach camera reacts that we would do. We'd also do a lot of like team comms look-ins where we would listen to their coverage, to the team comms like during the fights. But both the teams, we're the English broadcast, so both the teams in the finals were Korean, so we could not do comms for that. But basically, this series was crazy. I was not surprised that we won the Emmy. This is like one of the most nuts stories in esports history. It's like an insane Cinderella run going down to like the last possible moment, with like 2 like 10-year plus veterans who went to high school together. They were in like the same class, like on different teams going head to head, and one of them winning his like very first title in his like final year before he had to do mandatory military service in Korea. So it was a really special moment. It was incredible to get to be a part of it. And this team DRX's crazy run. And I did that pretty much right out of the gate. And yeah, it was one of the cooler things that I've ever got to work on. And we did win after that. So the next thing that I wanted to get into afterwards was just kind of like what a typical week looks like on the LCS, which is the name of the product that I work on week to week, if you're curious about what it's like to work on an esports broadcast. We have a story meeting. We work Wednesday through Sunday, which kind of sucks in some ways, obviously, but it's really great for like running errands and going to doctor's appointments. Um, on Wednesdays, we usually kind of take a look back at the previous week, decide what we want to change, decide what we don't want to change. Then we go around and talk about what the storylines and the matchups are for that week. And the producer team that I'm a part of, which is me and then three other producers, we basically work to turn the ideas that like talent has and the pitches that, other people in the production team have, and we turn those into like the actual building blocks of the show. We write scripts, we build a rundown. All that stuff starts to happen Wednesday night. Thursday and Friday, we're kind of creating the stuff for the show. So we're working with like the graphics team, video teams to kind of create all of the like lower thirds and full screens and B-roll and everything that needs to go into the show. And so it's a really quick turnaround because it's got to be done by Saturday morning. And then we have 2 days of games, we have 2 days off, and then we do it all again, which is definitely quite a lot sometimes. This is kind of like what one of our rundowns looks like. So one of my jobs as the associate producer is to make sure that this is always updated and this is always correct. And if you haven't worked in broadcast before, this is kind of the source of truth for everybody that works on the show. So you have like the columns are what the topic is that we're working on, and you can see like the duration, which is like how long it takes, the script column, which goes into prompter for talent to read, and then columns for video playback, graphics, LED screens, and then stuff for like the director and stage managers and PAs, like who's the talent for this segment and like where are they located on the set? What's the music that's going to play, even though that got cut off? It's my job to kind of make sure that that gets ready on time for the show days, or at least that's part of my job. Um, this is kind of a sample of like what the like wider zoomed out full show kind of looks like. We do like a 30-minute pregame. Then we do like a champion select where the players basically pick like what characters they're going to play. That takes about 10 minutes. Then we get into the games, 25 to 40. We do a post game, run some ads because we're not on cable, we're on Twitch. So we kind of get the freedom to sort of decide when we do that, which is a little bit nice. And then this would just be for a playoff series. So it would be a best of five. So this might end as a 3-0. It might go all 5 games. If it does end at a 3-0, we kind of skip games 4 and 5 and just go right to a post game interview, do an end of day show, and then we're off the air. It usually takes 4 or 5 hours, but depending on the game time, it can take longer. It can take a very long time. I think the longest individual game that there's ever been is like 94 minutes. But that is an insane outlier. Um, Moving on to the control room, another thing that I think is probably good to know, or I would have liked to know when I was a student, is the stuff that I'm using in my day to day at college, Ithaca or Syracuse, is it going to actually be relevant to me in the real world? And the answer, at least for our show, is yes. We are like we're basically like a sports broadcast inside of a tech company. So we have all the things that a normal sports broadcast would have. We have, we run Grass Valley switchers. We have a video playback room that runs EVS. We have a graphics system, which you can just see the logo. Is we run Viz, which I know Ithaca switched to recently. So the switcher in the control room is a Grass Valley switcher, just like the ones in the control rooms at Ithaca, except it's a lot bigger. But our B control room switcher is literally the exact same one. So if you, I think all that stuff is really relevant, and I think being able to do all that stuff and build the ICTV broadcast was really helpful to me for my application and for my like real work in the real world. Because I think a lot of the other applicants had worked, in OBS and all that stuff before, but I'd done that and had a traditional sort of broadcast background. And that's something that I think a lot of, if you're looking to go into esports, I think that's something that a lot of people are looking for, because I think a lot of them are looking for the next generation. And this is something they even said in my interview, where the first generation of people that came in to build this in 2013, 2014, 2015, the game had only been around since 2009. The people that they were bringing in were not um, they were not people who were deeply familiar with the game and the players and the history of the sport, because they were still making it as that happened. There wasn't enough time, and they were prioritizing people who actually knew how to make a live broadcast over people who were passionate about the game and like really knew what they were talking about. So I was kind of able to come in as someone who had watched everything since the very beginning and then also had that traditional broadcast training. So I think if that's something that you can get, that would be awesome, and that's something that Ithaca was, allowed me to do. The other thing that we've got is we have a big old studio space, which has some crazy gigantic LED walls and an LED floor. It seats about 300 people. So those things are gigantic. We can do like force perspective. It's a lot of fun. Um, and it's kind of funny that, we got those. Yeah, I know you guys at Ithaca have the giant LED walls now. These are like those, but much bigger. So that's another thing that you can find at school that I think would be very useful for you in the real world. Um, I kind of also wanted to talk about just something that I like about the thing that I like the most about my job compared to, I guess, um, the other experiences that I've had is basically the fact that I have a lot of creative freedom, right? Trust me to do a lot of very different stuff on a regular basis. So compare that to my experience with Masson, which was the Baltimore Orioles broadcast, right? That was a MLB team, MLB season, 162 games. And it was very, it was awesome to get to be a part of that, right? And something so historic and big and just like a team that I grew up rooting for. But at the same time, it was extremely formulaic. We were doing the same thing every day. And I think when you have 162 games a year, you kind of, at a certain point, have to decide to do that. The team was also terrible when I worked there in 2019, which probably didn't help. Um, but if you compare that to Riot, I had just so much more freedom at Riot to do what I want and do like fun and interesting and like different segments. And not everything. I'm gonna have you guys look at my reel that I put out this year. It doesn't have not everything in there is from Riot, but a lot of it is, and it definitely gives like a good idea of the kind of scope of work. And if you're wondering, yes, that is me in the thumbnail, and 400,000 people watch that live. You'll see it in a second.
I think we got rats or something in there.
Hey, get back!
Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
By the way, the LTA graphics team this year has been the best graphics team I think I've ever seen.
The animated lower thirds.
Yeah, all the lower thirds are insane. Like they're so good.
Honestly,
Like
the
they're
production
just
in general has been so good, no?
yeah.
I feel
They've
like it's
done-
actually been really, really good this year.
Yeah. So hopefully everybody could hear that. If you couldn't, it's awkward. But yeah, that's basically a little bit of a taste of like all the really cool, different, interesting stuff we get to do. We're a lot more creative with the set than we were allowed to be on the O's broadcast. And I'm also just kind of allowed to take on a lot more responsibilities than I would otherwise. Like earlier this year, my coworker who is like a level above me and is the one who's actually like calling the show uh, live in the moment or line producing it. He just got married and was out for a couple weeks. So they were like, "Hey, do you want to just like do his job while he's gone?" And I was like, "Sure." At somewhere, you know, like ESPN or somewhere else, I like never would have been able to have that opportunity. So I've been able to learn a lot more, a lot faster, which was kind of the bet that I took when I decided to, I guess, do esports instead of traditional sports. And yeah, you know, sometimes you just get to burst out of a wall dressed as a rat with makeup on. We kind of did a there, you know, it's just sometimes you can go, hey, today we're doing an Eric Andre show spoof, and you're gonna dress as a rat and burst out of a wall. I'm like, okay. Uh, so yeah, that's something fun. So yeah, the next thing I want to get into is kind of how esports is actually like influencing traditional sports. And, you know, this is not me saying like with this title that esports is going to replace sports. I think anybody that tells you that uh, doesn't know what they're talking about. You know, it's like, oh, people are going to drop stick and ball games for computers. Like that's absolutely not going to happen. It's just going to be a very big, very niche thing. Unless you're talking about something, you know, super far in the future, like full virtual reality or something, but that's science fiction. Sports is going to, you know, sports has been around forever. It's going to be around forever. But I think like how we kind of consume sports is going to evolve and is in the process of evolving. And the way esports has kind of done that is by embracing, you know, younger audiences, new media, and kind of new mediums for broadcast, right? We only stream on Twitch and YouTube. We're not on any cable at all. And so because of this, esports kind of gets a lot of wider broadcasting trends like 3-ish years early. Um, and it also is great because, you know, we're always trying to do new things. So we're allowed to kind of push the technical boundaries a little bit. And it's also like okay for, you know, our talent to like have fun. I guess it's our shows are probably allowed to be a bit more fun because, you know, we're not FCC regulated, so if like a swear word slips in somewhere, it's no big deal. And you know, we also have things that I'll get into in a second in these ones that are highlighted in red that kind of let us appeal to like new and different audiences than what you would normally get in a traditional broadcast setting. So on the technical side, obviously we did not invent AR, but we did use it. We do use it fairly often. Stuff like holograms, projection mapping, a lot of big LED screens. A lot of that stuff was in esports back in, you know, 2016, 2017, before it kind of made the jump to bigger broadcasts. AR is the exception. The other stuff was fairly new. There's currently a tool in development that has been announced where they basically made like an Unreal Engine duplicate of like the League of Legends map that you can like insert yourself into, and you can like move the camera around yourself and kind of decide what you want to look at any point in time. So it's something that I think is valuable and kind of puts me in, you know, someone who's working in esports and, you know, could probably see himself working back in traditional sports one day. It puts me in a position where I feel like I'm kind of on the cutting edge of stuff all the time, which is another thing I really like about my job. Our broadcast tone is also a lot lighter. We're a lot less buttoned up than a traditional broadcast. You know, we're not wearing suits all the time. And I think this is something that's it's starting to shift, and you're going to see shifting more in traditional sports broadcasting. I think sports fans, whether it's, you know, motorsports, just like football, soccer, you know, esports, whatever it is, you know, chess, whatever. People love the game. They want to see like passion, and they want to see that reflected in the coverage that they actually choose to watch. And don't get us wrong, obviously, you saw the reel from the Emmys. Like, we still dress up for the big events like the World Finals and everything, but in general, we're a lot less buttoned up. And like, week 4 of our show is a lot different from the Super Bowl. And, we don't have to pretend that it's not, right? And it's like, oh, this meaningless game between the, 1-6 Dolphins and the 2-5 Browns is actually super meaningful. And we have to pretend like we can have a little more fun with it. And, that kind of gives us more freedom, I think, because our fans are younger and kind of more willing to accept that as well. And it's just kind of more authentic and less traditional. We're sitting here in suits and presenting to you, at least not all of the time. The other big trend that kind of came from esports that's taking over traditional sports now and is kind of funny to watch is something called co-streaming. And basically co-streaming is outside figures kind of just taking the main feed of a broadcast and dubbing their own commentary or other content over top of it. So if you've seen like the Manning cast for Monday Night Football, those like crazy Nickelodeon kids, alternate broadcasts for the NFL, there's stuff for the NHL, a bunch of other sports. That is something that comes from esports. This was something that was happening in esports in around 2019, 2020. It kind of became super widespread, and it kind of spread its way out to traditional sports a few years later. And nowadays, I think kind of sports networks are, as we kind of shift into a more and more online world, right? And like everyone has their, creators or personalities that they follow on social media. They're kind of scrambling to adapt a lot of the bigger companies because they realize that like a lot of these huge online figures have like comparable viewership to their normal broadcasts. And so a big example of this is like ESPN like brought Pat McAfee in to do a lot of stuff for them when he was an independent podcaster before. Some people didn't like it. Some people did, but you can decide to tune in to his stuff if you want to, which is kind of the way that the wider media landscape is going. Like you're no longer locked into like every year there's less and less people that are turning on the TV to watch, watch the, just watch the TV, right? It's not, it's everyone kind of is going to the places that they want for the content that they want to see. So this is something that is happening in esports currently, and it's something that I'm really curious to see how traditional sports handle it, or if it's affected the same way, which is like what happens when more people prefer the co-stream, right? Because I think a lot of us are coming in as people who would be working on like the main broadcast that the co-stream is kind of piggybacking off of. And we've kind of seen this happen in esports within the last like year or so, where now like there are a lot of different co-streamers and a lot of people kind of just like to watch their guy, whether that's, there's also like co-streams in all sorts of different languages and all sorts of like different reasons why you would want to have different co-streams. And the whole idea behind them is you get to bring in new people that wouldn't otherwise watch the main broadcast. But like we're kind of dealing with right now, like what happens to the main broadcast when the co-stream gets higher viewership, right? And I don't know if this will happen in traditional sports as much or as quickly. I think just because it kind of has that natural barrier of like cable TV and like they don't get to show their numbers, obviously. But like right now, co-streamers are getting interviews at the World Championship and there's scandals because they're asking players certain questions and they're not journalistically trained. So there's like a lot of, it's a bit of a can of worms, even though it does make the numbers go up quite a bit. And that's something that we're kind of dealing with right now. And I'm really curious to see how that goes in sports. And I guess something for you guys, a parting question that I don't have the answer to, and I'm still working on right now. This is kind of what I'm working on with our thing. It's like, as someone who is working on the main broadcast and doesn't have 2 million followers of my own to go to go talk to instead, if they decide, oh, we're going to cut back on that, right? And also just in general, I want to make my stuff as good as possible, which is like, why should people watch us or your thing over their favorite content creator when their favorite content creator just has license to broadcast your, like, just dub over your thing with their own added stuff? That's a question that we're dealing with on our show. And I don't know the answer. So if anyone has any thoughts on that, I would love to hear them. I think I'm coming up on my time for 40 minutes, and that is the end of my prepared stuff. If you guys have any questions, feel free to let me know. And then also, if you're a student who is interested in getting into esports or broadcast or anything, esports broadcast or anything in between, I'll talk to you. Just reach out to me. I got my email on screen and my Discord on the screen. I'd be happy to talk. And yeah, I think that does it for my presentation.
Thank you, Manny. Awesome. That's a great question. I'm glad you guys are talking about that. There's a lot of different, casts for sports now that, compete with each other. And, I guess I always think about it as they're all kind of building off of the same foundation. But, to be in that room thinking, how do we win? How do we beat the Manning cast on our ratings? It's an interesting way of looking at it. And I can see how that might probably improve both of those products. Yeah.
Yeah, or do we? That is like another question too. Like, because ultimately, like, they're adding something on top of your thing, right? And it's like, does the main broadcast exist to like do its own thing and then co-streamers do whatever they want? Or does it get to a point where it's like the main broadcast is existing to like serve these other things, is also, whether that's a good or a bad thing is anyone's guess. But that's like a very real discussion that we're having right now. Like, this year there's leagues for all the different regions around the world, and one of them for China this year, they decided to not do an official English broadcast. They decided to discontinue it. They used to have one for a long time, and they said this is going to be co-streaming only. We're just going to give you a clean feed of what the Chinese broadcast is doing. And what we've seen is some people are watching the co-stream and other people are not. And basically what they've done is there's a fan English broadcast that has risen up and has been doing it for free, which is kind of makes me feel a certain way as a Riot employee, where I'm like, this feels like we should not be doing this. But they're massively popular and they're a traditional broadcast. So there is definitely still, I think, a subset of people who want like a more traditional experience that didn't just go to co-streamers, because for the first few weeks when there was nothing, you could see viewership was lower. So it's a different group of people that were coming in, which I thought was interesting, and it wasn't something that I knew before.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fascinating. Well, do we have questions for Manny?
I mean, I guess I can go. I have like a more of like a fun one, not like related to like your experience. But thanks first of all, foremost, thank you for your presentation. It's fantastic and super informative, especially as someone that's not like involved as much in the broadcast side of like esports content creation. It was really interesting being able to hear that different side. Um, but I was curious, since your background is more towards like the publisher side, you've been working with Riot for the last couple of years. I was wondering if you could foresee yourself in the future taking that shift from the publisher side into the organization side, where you're like you said, like working with the Orioles, like shifting over to working with like esports organization like FlyQuest or like Team Liquid, since you're like in LA, but not limited to that.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I have considered it. With the sort of rough couple of years that esports has been having in America with esports winter, I haven't really thought about leaving Riot for a team. I'm more kind of just for stability's sake, because a lot of those teams just kind of keep laying people off. That's kind of the main reason why I've kind of avoided them. I would like to stay on like a broadcast as opposed to like the content side, which is kind of why I wouldn't want to go to a traditional team. But yeah, I would consider moving to another game or another sport, to back to traditional sports. But I don't think I could see myself on a team anymore. just because of how volatile they've been.
Just to piggyback off that, what do you have any thoughts on like any titles that you can see becoming like major esports in the future?
To be honest, I mostly pay attention to League of Legends. I hope for the success of my company that 2XKO, Riot's fighting game, and Riftbound, their sort of like Magic the Gathering competitor, do really well because a rising tide lifts all ships. But yeah, I'm mostly a League of Legends person. I have been since the very beginning.
Any other questions for Manny?
I have just a quick question. First of all, Manny, thank you for your presentation. Thought it was really cool and super insightful. I don't want to take up too much of the question time. I can email you about this if you want to talk more about it. But I thought it was really interesting. I didn't know that ICTV had a like esports like broadcast. Um, and I would really love to like I only have a couple semesters left here, but at IC, but I would love to start that back up. If you want to talk about that more, um, I think it'd be really cool to have a show for esports on ICTV because we
Yeah,
don't
shoot me
have
an
that.
email.
All right. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I would love to. I'd love to do that. I think that the show was awesome when we were there, and it was only on really for that 1 or 2 semesters.
During
Because
COVID.
after that we all kind of graduated.
Yeah.
So it got kind of hard. Uh, yeah, it was a shame. I was hoping that it would continue. My broader pitch to Ithaca that unfortunately did not get picked up all the way was that basically my issue with it was I was like, this is always going to be volatile as long as we're a club because you can't really control like the players that are coming in and whether or not you will like have enough people to
Yeah.
field a team year after year or like a good team. It just so happened with our team that like everyone came in and they were in like the top 1% of the player base, but like the next year like the the like just the amount of players after all of us graduated because we were all seniors, it like the level of competition and interest kind of seemed to go down for a while. I'm not sure where it's at now, but I kind of had appealed to Ithaca and said, "Hey, like people, anyone who's talked to athletes at Ithaca, like they know that like it is a legitimate draw that someone could come here as a D3 athlete and be covered like they're a D1 athlete, right? Like they have that coverage from ICTV." And I was like, that's kind of our unfair advantage if we're Ithaca. We should kind of use that as a way to drive people to come play esports at our school, even if we can't give them quite as much money as some other schools. So
Yeah.
I would love to see Bombers Live Esports come back. But yeah, everyone that worked on the project graduated, and then no one else was kind of there at the time to lead it. There was a bit of a vacuum. So I would be super interested in helping that come back to life if people are
Cool.
interested.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I'll shoot you an email. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Anybody else? Sounds like we're maybe finishing on time. What do you think, Shayna?
Yeah, like I was telling Manny, I think everyone's tired from all these sports this week, keeping everyone up at all hours.
Oh man, yeah, they're back at it right now, aren't they? Anybody got the Dodgers game up?
It's so funny that you
18.
mentioned that because I was watching the Dodgers game last night, the entirety of it, and I was saying my like buddies asked me if I was staying up for the Gen G game since they're playing at like 3 a.m. And I was like, there's no way I'm staying up that late. And then the game ended at like 2, and I'm like, I probably could have stayed up for it.
Yeah, just double header at that point.
Cool. But yeah, I think we can end. Do you have a closing statement, Alex, that you'd like to say?
I mean, I think what Manny was talking about, making something exist that didn't exist there, was just I was there for it. It was a lot of asking questions, meeting people, and pushing until there was a wall there that we couldn't get through, but we made it work. He kept pushing. So I think that's something that works in the higher ed space, and it works in esports as well. And it's lessons to be learned that I think really transcend any of these industries. Is, if you just try to fit yourself into the box that they make for you, that's not going to get you anywhere. But if you find new ways to blaze these trails, you're going to make yourself indispensable to places. So I hope that's the takeaway, no matter what industry that you want to get into. And Manny, I really appreciate your time. I always like to hear your story and where you're at and where you're going next.
Thank you.